let's just be honest. I don't even know what some of these exercises are these women are doing. I swear they're straight from the devil.
Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast. Just as a reminder, we are talking about lust, porn, sexual addiction, and the impacts on men. Our mission here at Men of Iron is to change a culture one man at a time. And so if you want to partner with us and invest in men pursuing that, you can do so, menofiron.org/donate. We'd love to have your partnership. So, Tony, we're back on for a pretty heavy topic. I mean, it's something that probably impacts a lot of the guys that are listening. I mean, we didn't really talk about some of those stats, but I mean, any sort of stat that you look at, it's probably 70 to 80% of men have been exposed to pornography and or do it on a regular basis. Right. And we know that pornography is not just the only thing that we're talking about. We're talking more about lust and what that looks like. So even just kind of to that point, like, why do we want to broaden it out just beyond just pornography? I mean, and how would you define this struggle with lust and sexual addiction beyond just pornography? Because there's a lot of stats on pornography, and that's a big part of it. But is that the only thing?
That's a great question. So I guess because it's most accessible, that's what a lot of guys would go to. But I think of things like massage parlors, multiple partners. There's many, and I don't like how when we say pornography, like that does encompass some of it, but there are parts that other men are struggling with that even myself, like until I had to sit down with someone and hear someone's story, I was like, I didn't even realize that's part of it. Yeah. So we do, but I think when we say sexual addiction, what's good about it is it's going to encompass all of it.
Mm-hmm. What would someone say? Like, I'm not addicted. Like, so I can look back. So pornography was my inroad, and that created a sexual addiction. My journey was almost exclusively pornography. So it didn't get into multiple partners. It didn't do some of these other things that you maybe have mentioned. But it was an addiction to the point where there was like almost daily there was a season of life. And it was a multiple year season of from like high school through college where it was almost every day I had to be getting that hit. We talked about last week about the brain development and needing that dopamine hit. And so that included pornography, it included masturbation, and that was a regular thing. And it was something that I felt like I couldn't get away from. Like we talked about, I don't know if there was any hope. Like I need this. Like I can't do I know it's wrong, but I need it. But there's gonna be guys out there who go, I'm not addicted. Like sexual addiction sounds like an extreme as well. Guys that are like, I just, sometimes think about this girl at work, or I'll go online and maybe Google something I shouldn't, or every once in a while I'll masturbate or something. It's every once in a while. I'm not addicted to it. So how would you address that?
I don't know. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is so you can stop at any time. It's not something you have to have. It's not something that's affecting other areas of your life. Well, for people who are Christian, I feel like God reveals those kind of things. But when there's an addiction, it's something that you just can't be without. There really isn't a certain amount of time. Maybe for someone it's I need it every day, and maybe for someone else it's hey, I can make it every 30 days, but I'm going back there. Well, that's an addiction if you're going back there. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is, as I said, it's a passion of mine to help other guys. So I've read books on it, I've took courses on it, and it's interesting to see that while someone may go, I don't know how he can struggle with that. But then someone could be struggling with, like I said, there's people that have to have sex with other people continuously. And it could be something about getting a self-worth. It could be from the high of sex, but it's like needing to be wanted by someone else and having to continue to have partners. Someone may say, I don't understand that. I'm married and I would never want to be with anybody else. But they might go to a massage parlor or they might go to porn. So there's something, but it's all from the same part of our brain that's wanting that same thing, and it's usually some type of sexual addiction.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good scriptures that we'll probably tease out in some of the our Men of Iron Minute emails that go out. But I think of for one, I think of when Jesus redefines it in Matthew chapter 5, 27 through 30. He's kind of teaching to this. He goes, hey, you've heard not to commit adultery, right? Like, all right, we know most everyone would faith background or not would say cheating on your wife is not a good thing. You shouldn't sleep with someone else's wife. Like, okay. And he's like, yeah, that is a standard. Everyone should have that. But he's like, when you look at a woman that's not your wife, that's someone else's daughter, sister, wife, whatever. If you look at someone else's wife, that is adultery. Like, he raises the standard. And I think especially when it comes to, and because we could talk about like, why is that standard so high? One, for a Christian, if you follow the Lord, that is the standard, because that has to do with objectifying and valuing what God has designed in other people and relationships and commitments and all those things. Not to mention then, from the practical standpoint, when you start with, okay, I'm just going to think about this girl at work, or when I see someone when I see her on the beach and like grab a couple glances, like it's not really that big a deal. One, it does go against that standard and that commitment, and it leads to other things like that. It's a quick spiral. Those dopamine hits start small, and that's the way the brain works. Like, the same thing doesn't work the next time, and then you're like, okay, I want more of that. I want more of that. I want more. Those images don't do the same thing for me the next time. So, I think that the standard is a big deal for me in terms of what that holistically looks like.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on what you're saying is, when you're saying about just look at a girl, there's nothing wrong with looking when we're looking lustfully at a girl, at a woman. And something that helped me, and this also could be just my opinion, you said it's natural, right? To look. So men are attracted to women, women are attracted to men. One place I feel like we have to give ourselves a little grace is the first look. And I'm talking about a look you're not intentionally doing.
Right.
And you and I could probably relate to the gym. And I just want to say, especially after the first episode, when I say this is something that is no longer something, I don't want to say I don't struggle with it. It's gone. God has given me victory over it. But if you don't think that I have boundaries and I have to be so careful, I don't live in like a prison like I used to. But even today, like when I go to the gym, if I take the first look because I'm looking over in a direction, and some of these, let's just be honest, I don't even know what some of these exercises are these women are doing. I swear they're straight from the devil, because I look at that and I go, I don't know what you're working out, but like it does not look like it should be done in a gym. So this is something that I feel, because of what I used to deal with, I cannot take that second look or that extended look. I give myself grace for the first look or thought, because it's something I had no control over. But what does the Bible say? Take every thought captive. So I immediately say, now the second look is now intentional. There's a reason. And a friend of mine once says, what is that look going to cost you? And you touched on that a little bit. So we have those things in our brain, and we may be fine for a few hours or a few days, but our brain has a way of bringing those images back. So when I think about why I need to monitor everything I'm taking in, I think, what price am I going to pay if I take the second look? Is this something I'm going to have to now deal with later, think about later, see in my head later? Well, I don't want to pay for that, so I don't want to take that second look.
Yeah, it starts to build. I mean, and you get to a point where you can start tracking, for me, the same thing. I can, in my healing process, now evermore can look back and go, okay, that thought, that second glance led to this, and then it stirred and it stayed in my mind, and that commercial hit, and then there was that add on, and then you start going down.
Because the devil slow plays you.
Yeah, it's what's
He's
the
patient.
Slow fade, right? That song it's like it starts way back here with that first second, like how do I respond initially? Because then it builds. So we've got a little bit of time left on this podcast to kind of really dive into how does it affect relationships, specifically marriage. And just a couple of stats that I'm curious your response to. Nearly 40% of married men seek out illicit images on a regular basis.
40%?
40% of
Yeah.
married men seek out illicit images. So again, that's the front line where we can measure. I mean,
The
you
ones
can
that told the truth.
right, and you can track online. Like, so we're not even talking about those other glances, the other thoughts, masturbation.
Right.
Like, seek out illicit images on a regular basis. The second thing, 56% of marriages that end in divorce, at least one spouse was obsessed with porn.
Okay.
And probably the man, right? Like, it's probably on that side. So like those two, how do you respond to those and hear those results and how lust, sexual addiction, porn, all these things, how does that affect marriages and relationships that are supposed to be healthy?
Well, so again, my opinion, I think those are skewed. I believe they're a lot higher because we know not everyone's honest. But however, hey, let's hope they're correct. But I would say, me personally, it led to objectification. So this was no longer a girl that I was with. This was an object there to please me. And I constantly think about women that I've hurt, and want to apologize for that. And that's a slippery slope, but it's, you're taking something that is meant to be good, and you make it very selfish and all about yourself. And, as men, I will tell you, for me, I didn't lead right. Like, I thought, well, this is a natural thing. And I don't know how real we can get on the podcast, but I'll say, you might have a partner that is like, I'm okay with this. I like this. It's still your job as a man to lead. And I failed in that many times. And I hate that. I wish I could just go to every person and apologize. It's not me anymore. I'm sorry I hurt you. But that objectification is a horrible thing, because there are also women that are looking for value, and you're not giving them value. You're just taking. And that is not going to lead to a strong relationship.
Right. So
I think that could cause a lot of distance, and a wife, or hopefully it's a wife, right? Is not going to feel valued in that relationship. And it has to be something that's shared between the both of you mutually, and really because you love each other and just want to get closer together. So the other thing is, you're measuring your wife up against these images that are, let's just be honest, not many people's wives are competing with what you're looking for, because men will spend hours finding the right scene or going to the right person.
Right. You're customizing it, and it's all focused on, again, to your point even earlier, again, any healthy relationship, whether girlfriend, marriage, even friendship, is supposed to be mutually beneficial. We're not in it for ourselves. In fact, we're called to look beyond our interests and look for those that we can serve in other people. So especially in an intimate relationship, with a dating relationship, a marriage especially, man, I'm trying to serve their needs, not just take. Pornography, lust, sexual addiction, wherever you are at in that journey, like, it is very self-focused. It is, I want this, I feel this way, I'm hurt by this, I'm stressed, whatever it is, and I want to soothe and ease that with these things. I'm going to customize the thing that I want and need, and it's not realistic, and it's very self-focused, very selfish at the end of the end of it.
And it's bringing in sin, which sin brings separation from your wife, from God.
Yeah. I'll speak to it myself. Like, it breaks intimacy with those around you, including with God, which, again, and this is another podcast, but like, it's not that God is the one pushes us away. We often think, oh man, I used to feel that way for so many years. I have broken this. God needs me to lament and like be sad and angry. He's got to punish. There's got to be some sort of punishment, some sort of discipline before it can come to him. That is a miscued theology. So just to briefly say, if that's where you are, that is not true.
Right.
God says, like, the very second you've masturbated to like the most extreme pornography on the internet, like, the very second that is finished, it doesn't, you don't need a certain time to come back. He wants you right away, because that distance, that's part of the attack too. Oh, more and more distance. God doesn't love you. He doesn't value you. But that naturally, that disconnect and intimacy, that happens from our end to God. It happens with the relationships around us. I mean, it impacts wife, kids, friends, where you feel like you can be present, it breaks intimacy.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. And no one wants that. God doesn't want that for us.
Yeah.
What else? How does lust? How does it break our covenant and commitments in relationships? What other ways? We got objectification. We've got disconnect and intimacy. Any other ways that happens and impacts?
I don't know if this is answering the question, but I just feel like it absolutely, going back again, it's like a separation from God. The more we're lusting after things we want, we're not going after the things that he wants. We're going after our priorities, which is keeping us from him. And especially the part you said about how long people will beat themselves up over it. I mean, that was
a shame cycle.
Oh, it's terrible. I could say, like, for myself, I think my issue with grace is I could be an extremist sometimes. So when I see people, well, if I do this, God will forgive me, I can't stand that. So rather than go to the neutral place of where grace is probably the way God views it, I go all the way over here to, I don't get grace for that. It's too many times.
Yeah.
Same mistake too many times. There's no way God is okay with this. And that's just not true. So, like, we do have to go to the Bible to, like, let's know the truth. What does God say? You either believe it or you don't. And I do think it's very important to, that's why that connection piece, I'm always going to go back to it, so much so that they might have to edit it out of the podcast because in so many areas of our lives, that connection piece with God will be the solid piece that will just help us to walk through anything that we're going through, not only the sexual addiction.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to, and you said this already, guys, like, God wants the fulfillment of intimacy and connection. Like, we are designed for this. Like, just like our brains are wired that way, like, God wants fulfillment and intimacy in our lives with the relationships around us, with him. And that includes sexual intimacy. Like, he designed sex. It's not like, man, this is just God's just trying to keep us from having fun. Like, actually the opposite. God wants it to be as great as possible. And you don't do that when you introduce these other things that are broken. The other piece that I'll just say as we kind of wrap is, like, man, regardless of whether your wife or girlfriend or others know, you are also living a life of really dishonesty and like hiding, right? Like, oh man, like, how many lies I've told as related to this struggle through the years when I was living with my parents, figuring out ways to wake up and turn on the TV when they're not around, or hiding things, or deleting search history. And then certainly as I got into relationships that mattered later on, man, lying to them about where I was getting intimacy and fulfillment, and with my wife, like, hiding things and lying about things. Like, there's a piece of integrity and honor that goes out the window when you're trying to cover your trace and cover your tracks like that. And so again, that goes back to disconnection and intimacy and covenant and commitment to the Lord, to yourself, to others around you. So I think it's a big deal. The last thing I'll just kind of say, I think this goes to connection, is I think of Job 31:1, where he says, I've made a covenant with my eyes not to look at a woman with lust. And so, like, a lot of covenant is really about intimacy. And it's about commitment to another person, God first and foremost, others around us, whether we're married to them or not. Like, we actually covenant with everyone. Like, I covenant with you as a brother and friend. Like, so I'm going to be choosing things that are going to honor that covenant. And that includes women who are not, okay, I'm not married to this woman that I'm looking at, but I'm going to covenant with the Lord and with her to not objectify her and take away the value that God's designed her for, as well as all the covenants that I've made with my wife and my kids to be honest and pure and committed to those relationships. So lust trickles down, and it comes down to a lot of that connection and intimacy and covenant. So last thought as we wrap up, what can guys do? What should guys do? Think about coming off of this podcast.
Yeah, well, one thing real quick on the covenant, I love that, because that's something I'm going to add to mine. But, like, another part that I have been incorporating lately into different places I may go that may have some temptations is I go, God, I want to worship you with my eyes. It may sound weird, but when you're in the middle of that And taking a second look is not worshiping God with my eyes. So I have a choice every time. And that's really helped me. So maybe that'll help somebody. But I would say, like, for anyone who's, especially in a marriage, that's like hiding this, seek some accountability, seek some mentorship, somebody you trust. Reach out to menofiron.org. We'll help you find a mentor, or look for somebody in your church. Like, let's get it out so we can do something about it.
Yeah, it's good. All right, we'll keep talking about this topic next week. Reach out to Men of Iron. Shoot us an email. We're here. We'll respond. We'll get you in the right direction if you need a resource. And always just keep with us, and we'll keep talking next week. Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. At Men of Iron, we exist to change a culture one man at a time, and we'd love to have you partner with us. So go to menofiron.org to see how you can get involved, or donate at menofiron.org/donate.